We're at the hour. Good afternoon, everybody. Of course, here in Europe, good afternoon. In America, good morning probably, and in Asia, most probably good evening, or maybe even far away, good night. Our next Areopa webinar. Yes, you might have seen that the screen was already there. Somehow the webinar was already started automatically. We don't know exactly why, but nevertheless, we're on time. Good day. Today we have two speakers, being Ludo van Ende and Johan Knops. They both work together in DeviLite. They will give a more detailed introduction of themselves in the next couple of minutes. As always, everybody is welcome to come around with their questions. However, as you might have noticed today, your microphone is muted. So use the question window in the GoToWebinar control and put your question there. I'll, as a moderator, will be picking it up. Of course, as always, we will be recording it, and as you can see, we've already collected quite a nice number of webinars and put that on YouTube. Feel free to go there and, of course, subscribe yourself to it. For anybody who wants to be in the know of what's ahead, feel free to use this URL. Of course, it's not a very readable one, but that's what it is at the moment, to get yourself subscribed to our newsletter at MailChimp. If you want to know what is upcoming, you can have a look at our website, and for your convenience, there's a listing already on this slide. On Tuesday, March 3, we will have Broder and James Pearson presenting their road to SaaS with Clever Dynamics. We continue, let's say, that small series on March 31. Then Hellemans of Scout will tell what their road to SaaS was. And on April 28, we will have Martin Powells of Easy Step 2 to tell about, well, you could say it's not fully a road to SaaS, but how they have done migrations to the cloud of NAV or Business Central installations. But today, of course, we will have our presentation first on, well, how to view finance and operations from a Business Central perspective, or maybe that's too big. An introduction for Business Central, NAV pros into finance and operations. It's a world that's coming closer together as we're on under this umbrella Dynamics 365, and yes, all those different parts, Power Apps, Flow, etc., are going to work more and more together. Thanks to our sponsors, we're able to do this every time again. And yes, the floor is going to be now for Ludo.
Okay, good afternoon to all of you, all the Business Central lovers that would like to know more about finance and operations. So I'll give you a short introduction on who we are, what are we doing, and a little bit on DeviLite. So we'll talk about the history of Dynamics 365 finance and operation, where is it coming from, and also a little exciting, the positioning versus Business Central. So, and in the next part, my colleague Johan will talk you through the look and feel, and also we took two examples, the financial period close, so you can compare this a little bit to Business Central or to NAV. And also we'll talk about the how to manage your environment via Lifecycle Services, which is a little different than how things go with Business Central. So now a bit about DeviLite. DeviLite is a small company that I started together with Johan some time ago. We are a small team of, let's say, die-hard professionals who have their experience in long time experience in NAV/Business Central, and combined with finance operations or AX experience. And we sat together some time ago, and we formed a team, and the goal, which I'll explain on the next slide. You'll see that we are wanting more. You see that we are located in Belgium, somewhere near Brussels. It's called Heist op den Berg. Literally translated, I shouldn't do it, is highest on the hill, but okay. So near Brussels, let's say. On the next slide, you'll see what we do at Devolet. So I talked you through about the experience with the both of the products. We can do full projects, full cycle projects for our customers, meaning selection and implementation itself, or a combination of it with project and change management. And we act more like a business partner instead of a software vendor. So we decided not to sell licenses. The ultimate goal of the company is that we provide companies with to get the best out of their ERP. So that's our goal for our customers. Okay, on the next slide, I'll tell more about the history of finance and operations. This is a slide or a screenshot I made from a website, and just to say that, okay, there is a lot of versions. It all started in '98 with Axapta 1.0, and similar to NAV, there's been a lot of versions. On the next slides, we'll talk about the introduction of AX. So that started in '98, which was, let's say, more than 10 years later than the introduction of Navision, which started in the, let's say, early or mid '80s. And Microsoft Dynamics AX was at that time called IBM Axapta. So IBM and the Danish Damgaard data, they worked together. And they called the first version IBM Axapta, which is maybe a little surprising to you. Then in 2000, Navision Software and Damgaard merged together. They were hardly like 20 kilometers away from each other, and yeah, more or less doing the same. In 2002, there was the big takeover by Microsoft, and also you have to know that Microsoft actually bought the Navision Damgaard company, mainly they've been telling at that time for Axapta, which was a little ahead of Navision. Okay, on the next slide we'll see that we went through a lot of these versions. Like with NAV, Microsoft switched it to calling it Microsoft Dynamics, which was the common name in 2006 already. And if we move to the next slide, we'll see that, okay, there was a really important release after being rebranded to Microsoft Dynamics 365 for operations. There was in 2006 a real important release which delivered a new version which was totally browser based on HTML5 client, and that's also the experience we want to show now. So there was a little so there was a big change, and they were let's say some time ahead of Business Central. In 2017 the product was rebranded to Finance to Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations. It has undergone a lot of naming, different naming, and later also there was an additional version, Dynamics 365 for Retail. Okay, then we'll take now a look at the positioning. Okay, on the left hand you have Dynamics 365 Business Central versus Finance Operations, and we need to click a little bit, Johan. Okay, the first thing, if you look at the bigger picture, you can say that Business Central is what we would call an all-in-one business platform. So it's one version, one software doing a lot of things. if you compare that to finance operation, you could say it's more a tier 1 ERP. So Business Central is called a business platform, which I think is the correct wording for it. And Dynamics 365 Finance Operations is the tier 1 ERP, which is also a modular solution where you can have additional things built on top of. The tier 1 ERP, well, that can, it's in the same space like SAP or Oracle. Okay, we move on. The next part is the things that make Business Central typical or throughout the all of its history is that there was always a localization per country in a separate version. And the other thing which made it brilliant was that, okay, there was a platform together with an application which was easy to customize, which we all loved and hate together because it's the best thing and the worst thing about the product. Although things have changed now a little, which makes customization easier. If we compare that to finance operation, then we can say that there was from the beginning on a focus on international, on having one version with all localization incorporated. And there are really a lot of localization for a lot of countries that are supported, and also lots of languages which are supported. And one last thing, where is the focus? So you can say for Business Central, the focus is on the small to mid-sized companies, whereas finance operation is definitely aiming at mid-sized and larger enterprises. And Microsoft also built in a minimum to start from. The minimum number of users is 20. Okay, you can tell a lot more about this comparison, but okay, it is what it is. If we looked more into pricing, to give you an idea, finance operation would cost you around 150 euro per user per month, whereas Business Central comes in more flavors. The essentials or the central premium, Business Central premium version is around 80 euro per user, which is like, say, more or less half of it. That also gives you an idea about, okay, what do I buy for this money? And it should be clear that if you buy or if you go for finance operation, you have a lot of functionality, more functionality than Business Central in the box if you buy it. We'll dig into it, and I'll transfer the session now for the general look and feel to Johan.
Yes, good afternoon. So like Ludo said, the goal today is to show you high level what is finance and operations all about. We're going to give you some examples. Of course, within 1 hour, it's not possible to show you every ins and outs of the system, but you will have a good look and feel of what you can do with it. So let's see. Voila. So like Ludo said, finance and operations is module based. For me, a big advantage of that is that the layout of each module, which I'm going to show you also in the system, is that the layout is identical. So each module has something like master data, something like report, setup, and so on, but everything is in the same order on the screens. It looks quite trivial for some people, but for me it's handy that I can navigate through the menus without any problem. Next to the modules, Microsoft also introduced Workspaces. The things you also have in Vision and Business Central is that you have one cockpit per, let's say, a functional profile in your company, like an accountant or a CFO. They all have different needs, and they can get more or less customized screens in the form of Workspaces. So also going to show you that. Built-in applications, so Microsoft releases applications to fill out your expense notes with scanning, to fill out your timesheets, to approve purchase invoices. Those applications are standard in system. But you can also build your own application on a functional level. So a functional consultant should be able to build an easy application in finance and operations directly. Next to that, Power BI. So finance and operations has something like 15 to 20 BI cubes, data sets that you can explore within the system, and they are visualized as Power BI dashboards. So in the environment that I have over here, we have launched some cubes, but not all. But you can just start them and then you can use them. So it's not that you have to buy separate licenses or something like that. You just have to activate this functionality. Security, also a difficult topic in most implementations, but in finance and operations, you can see on each screen which security is involved. So you can see the roles, the duties, the privileges, and so on, and you can tailor-make your security on a functional level once again. So a functional consultant can create own roles, own duties, and so on. Like Ludo also said, we have one database. So we have one big database for all localizations. So if we go to a customer with the Belgian localization, with a subsidiary in the UK, with a French branch, and so on, we can set up these companies within the same database. So that's a big difference, I think, with Business Central. And that's also leans to the fact that the customers are merely mid-sized to large companies which are active on an international scale. Then things like data sharing, sharing of items, sharing of your chart of accounts, financial dimension sharing, and so on is standard. So if you have a group approach, you can say have one chart of accounts, one set of financial dimensions, and you can maintain them on a consolidated level. And last but not least, one of the points over here is also the fast company setup. So we have like things that you have in Business Central with your rapid start functionality. We have something extended in finance and operations. So you can migrate customers, vendors, every tables which are linked via a simple tooling, which is called data management. And that tooling you can also use to set up interfacing, that you say, I want to incorporate certain EDI files on a regular basis, and that you say every 5 minutes I have to poll for dispatch advices or something like that. That also can be accomplished with that tooling. And then we are also going to show you Lifecycle Services, which is the management tool for the environments of the system. So in brief, I'm going to show you the system. So this is the layout of finance and operations, color schemes, etc. Depends on your personal flavor, but you can put in the colors that you want. You can make the buttons bigger or smaller, so that's nothing fancy. But on the left-hand side, you see the things I talked about, the modules, workspaces. If I click on that, you see all the modules that are available in the system. So I am a system administrator, meaning that I see all modules which are available in finance and operations. You will also see that the modules are in an alphabetical order. And depending on the type of English, those two over here will change to sales ledgers, purchase ledgers. So depending on your language, the labels of the modules will change. If I click on a module, you will see that the logic, I have workspaces, I have vendors, which is master data. I have things to do like purchase orders, invoices, payments. I have periodic tasks, I have reports, I have setup. If I go to another module and I do the same, you will see that I have the same logic. So workspaces is at the top, setup is more or less at the end. So for me, it's very convenient as a consultant that I can move through the menus. And if I click over here on my master data customers, all customers, then it will show my customer list. If I do the same at accounts payable side, I will see my vendor list. So this is my customers list. If I do the same at accounts payable, you will see I will get my vendor list. The speed of the system, because I can imagine that you're thinking of that. You're currently looking at a freshly installed training environment. We launched it Saturday evening, meaning that the system is heavily depending on cache. So if you don't work in the environment, which is the case now because I'm the only one with access to this environment for now, the system needs to warm up. So the more you click, the more you run reports, the faster it becomes. So that's why if I open a second environment, which is already heated up, if I click here on all vendors, it's faster. So also linked to the cloud logic is that the system is heavily dependent on caching. So I go back to my my purple one, my purple environment. So next to the modules, Microsoft introduced the fact of workspaces. And workspaces are in fact all the things you see over here, which are also marked on your root page. And so the things you see over here, the blocks, are all the workspaces that are available in the standard. You can create your own workspaces. If you say, I want to have a workspace for a special kind of accountant, you can make your own special workspace for that and add lists to that, reports to that. So that's not fancy, but okay, it's handy to do. If I go, for example, to, let's say, financial period close, that's the one I like to show during sessions or during demos, is in fact a task list. A task list for financial people. And for financial people, it's very important that they do certain tasks at a certain time. So each end of the month, for example, an accountant needs to declare the VAT statement. Seems simple, but okay. If you have it in a list in the system, it's easy. What is the goal of this workspace is that CFO can see, okay, for, in this case, the month of November 2019, I have 278 tasks which are due. So meaning that my accountants haven't done their job. And then what is the goal? That I can see based on the company where the tasks are still open. So I see in company 1000, okay, I have 24 tasks remaining. So there's nothing being done because I have a 0% completion. I can see where are my trouble areas. I can say general ledger, accounts receivable, taxes, and so on. You can create your own areas if you want, because everything you see over here is configuration. If you want to have 2000 tasks to do at the end of each month, that's also possible. You just set up, but you have to do it. You can have a status per person, so per accountant, if you want to change them, and you can have the full task list. Voila. So here you see all the tasks with, in one of the columns, the company, the area, the responsible, the date on which it has to be done normally. You see a paperclip if there is an attachment with some kind of procedure that needs to be executed. But the handy part, it's not just a list. The list is clickable, meaning that if I click on this one, check vendor guarantee status, that I go to the screen directly. So I can see, okay, the warranties on my vendors are okay. Then I can say for me the task is completed and I move on to the next task. So this is a task list for the accountant. So the accountant can say to the system, give me my end of month task list, and he can perform his actions with an advantage for the CFO that he can follow the progress in the system without having to ask the accountant. So this also requires some kind of regulation. So your accountants must do this in the system. So yeah, you have to teach them a little bit how to do it, and they have to become acquainted also with this logic. Things like VAT statements over here, the monthly VAT statement. If I click on that one, you will go to typical Belgium. The interval tax declaration is the VAT declaration in Belgium. But more important, if I click on that one, he will say that I have dependent tasks. So normally an accountant should first print certain reports, reconcile them. And when he has done that part, he can complete the VAT statement. So you can build in a certain logic that you say, no, you have first to pull out a trial balance before you can run your depreciations. I don't know what. That's all part of the configuration. So it's a handy toolkit that you have. You can put in templates per month, per quarter, per year, because tasks depend on the kind of periodicity that you have. But that's all in the system. So it's a handy part. Let's look back to my slides. Yeah, built-in applications is something different. For the time being, I haven't launched a mobile application. But on the right-hand side, you will see that the system will load all standard Microsoft applications. Things I told about project time entries, time sheeting. You have things like expense management. You have things like putting sales and purchase orders. So all these things I can launch to my employees. So if I click on this one and I say publish, all my users, you see it is published successfully. All my users with the application of Dynamics 365 on their smartphone can now access the timesheeting module. If I say at a given moment, no, I want to decommission it, I can unpublish and it's not available anymore. So these are the standards, but you can create your own. Here you see create, and then you can in fact create a mobile application by clicking in the application. If you want to say I want to have an application to create a new customer based on my mobile device, you can teach the system which steps have to be done. And those steps you can publish in a custom mobile application. That's the idea. And it works. I'm not going to show you because of the time, but I tested it already a couple of times and it's no issue. I'm going to close my screen if I can. It's very difficult. Let's see. Maybe you don't see it, but I have an other screen overlaying this one and it's quite annoying. So let's try. Okay, voila. Then the Power BI dashboards, I think it's nothing fancy because Business Central also has a nice reporting functionalities. I think the only big difference with Business Central is that we have standard cubes, BI cubes, which you can consult. If I go to this environment and I go to a workspace for the CFO, for example, a CFO is normally the person who wants to see dashboards, flashy KPIs, things like that. He will get a dashboard with data recovered from my BI cubes. You see on this screen, I don't see much, only the trial balance. That's because we only activated things like the GL cube, the general ledger cube. If I go to another report, let me see. That's also a financial report with your costs and your revenue. Here you see the revenue accounts, the expense accounts. But the fun part is that everything in this this dashboard, let's say, is clickable. So it becomes blue, and then you go to the entries in the system. So you can see directly which entries originate to that amount in the previous screen. If I do escape or back, I go back to the previous screen and I can move on. So these are standard workspaces with Power BI incorporated. You can also add your own Power BI graphs and statistics like in every workspace you want. So I don't know by heart which one is entitled to do it, but normally you will see on the right hand side a thing like add Power BI reports, and then you can add Power BI components into it. The role-driven security for me as a functional guy is very convenient because also with larger customers, they have big demands with regards to system security. So if they ask me something like, yeah, I want that a certain user cannot see the vendor cards anymore, I can go either into the security settings directly, or I can say on this screen, vendor account cards, what are the security diagnostics? And if I click on that, I will see in which role this card can be accessed, in which duty, and lowest level, which privilege. So let's say if I want to have my financial controller over here, then I have to look later on if the duty is attached, which is normally the case, and the privilege. So I can skip the lowest level in that role, and the maintain vendors, for example, or the view vendors, or both, kick them out, publish the role, and then the security is applied directly into the system. This is basic, so it's screen-based, but I can also, if I want, dismiss certain buttons or certain options, or even in lists that I can blur out things like a delete option or a new to create a new record option. So that's all functional work. I remember for the previous version, it was all technical. So we always needed a developer to create new roles, to adjust standard roles in the system. Now it's all functional, and it's all functional where you can manage it yourself, so you can deploy new security settings on the fly. And it works quite well because here we have a lot of security settings. We have a lot of custom objects, which we also secure. So if I go, for example, to this one, this is a custom screen. And if the developer does its coding correctly, you see that we have custom roles, duties, and privileges. So you can, even with your customization, create functional security in the system. Also, a big difference, or which version of NAV I know, for example, is that if you disable something in the system based on security, it's gone from your screen. So if you're not able to see the trial balance based on your security settings, it will not appear in your menus. So you won't see it, you're not able to click it, so it's gone. So that's why a lot of people over here have screens with not much on it. And it's sometimes a little bit awkward because I see everything and they don't see anything. Okay, so one database, like Ludo said, with all supported localization, because Microsoft doesn't support every country. Countries like Ukraine, Russia, economics which are moving fast due to regulations over there. Sometimes Microsoft is a little bit behind on those ones. But if you say the Middle East with Dubai and things like that, they were ahead of the localization with the sales tax, which we incorporated over there. So the focus of Microsoft is I think, quite good. So most of the localizations are present. If not, like in the NAV channel, you have partners who are in that specific country who can provide you a specific localization. But to my extent, I'm aware of things like Ukraine and Luxembourg. You know, Belgium, there is an even more, a country that is even smaller than Belgium called Luxembourg. They also have their own complex localization. And because it's so complex, Microsoft doesn't invest in that localization because the market share is too small for them. So you have to look at a partner to deliver that localization. If I go back in the system, over here you see that I have a lot of companies. If I'm able to, screen overlaying. So here you see all the companies which are in the system. But more important is that we also work, that's a way of working, we work with golden configurations per country. So we make a master setup per country. which is of course not visible to the end users. And that's a golden config we use to push data to new entities that we set up. If we have a new Belgian company, then we use the golden config from Belgium. If you have a new company in the Netherlands, we use the golden config of the Netherlands. And so you create golden configs like you want, but that's just a way of working. It's not that it's required, but it's sometimes handy. So now I'm into a Dutch company, meaning that the localization of the Netherlands is loaded. I always give the same example, but I know that an audit file, for example, is specifically created for the Netherlands. And you see Dutch audit file, that means it's only for the Netherlands. But also important in the URL of the system, you see that ledger audit file _NL. So that means that we have a localization for the Netherlands over here. If I type in the example of the previous functionality, Intervat, it's not present in the system because it's typically for Belgium. So you see it works in both ways. Either we have localization which is enabled, and we also have localization which is disabled. Things like posting journals that we need for VAT reasons in Belgium, it doesn't find it. So you see posting definitions, blah, 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 but you don't see posting journals. If I switch back to to a Belgian company, voilà. If I type in Intervat over here, you will see, okay, setup, declarations, and so on. If I type in posting journals, you see posting journals. If I type in audit file, you don't see an audit file. So that's what I mean with the localization. So if you create a new legal entity in the system, you have to indicate the address. So let's say an address in Belgium or the Netherlands, and based on that address, he will load and he will unlock the localization for that company. Yeah. Okay, questions so far? Because I speak fast normally. So any questions?
There was a simple question actually, Johan, from Thomas Hüttner, not related directly to what you've been showing from the slide, but he asked, wasn't finance and operation rebranded lately?
Yes, correct. So now it's called Dynamics 365 Finance. That's the price of 150 euros. And then you can add modules for supply chain, the logistical part. And you can add even more, an extra module, which is called retail. So if you have a point of sales things, you have shops, then you also need that component. So that means in total, if you have all the blocks together, that the license is the 210, which was the price earlier. For one user per month, 210 euros.
Standard.
Yes, with finance, with supply chain, and with retail.
And now they split that apart.
Yes, because at the customer that I'm showing here, we only have finance, so we don't need supply chain, we don't need retail.
And what is the meaning still then, or has that from the way of operations? Is it still like you use it still here in the presentation, and we communicated that also, that it's finance and operation? Actually, it's finance. It's finance, yes. Okay.
But the thing is, if I go back to the system, you will see finance and operations. So this version of the system is the latest version. So the latest update of Microsoft installed 1 week ago. So the latest, but it's still called finance and operations.
Okay.
Cool. Whereas it should be finance or finance and supply chain or finance and retail. So they're a little bit behind with their marketing. That also means license-wise, I don't know how they're going to put that into the system. Because over here we paid for the 210 euros, so we have every functionality available. But for other customers, I don't know how they are going to do that. I imagine something with security, and based on that, they will hide certain things in the menus, probably. But over here we have all modules available because we paid the full price. So you will see things like production, you will see where is it? Warehouse management, things like transport management. That's all related to supply chain.
Is it difficult to say what belongs to the finance part, so to the basic part?
By heart, yes, but normally on the labels of the components, they have specific warehouse modules. They have transport components, so they can easily pull them out of the system, to say so.
And something like projects or project management and accounting, that's part of finance.
That's a good question. I have to look it up, but I could imagine that it's in between, So it's finance, but other people will say no, it's supply chain, but I think it's finance.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You will see, that's a difficult exercise you have to do. If you go to a customer, maybe some users need supply chain part, so you will buy the additional 30 euros for them, and others only have to see finance, so they will have limited options in the system based on their license. Because now I only have in the system full licenses with all the blocks in it. I have team members and I have an in-between license, which we don't use. So we have the team members for timesheeting and so on. So in this database, we have about 1,700 users.
Okay.
For the time being.
Yeah.
But license-wise, like you said, good remark, they changed, let's say 1-2 months ago to finance.
Clear. That were the questions so far, Johan.
Okay, good. Very good. Very good. Data sharing. So we have two concepts. First concept is that we have things which are by default shared, like a chart of accounts is a typical thing. If you work in a group and you have 6 localizations in Business Central, you have 6 databases, but maybe you have only one chart of account. If you have the maintenance of that chart of account in your job description, you have to maintain 6 databases. So that's why in this option, you have a chart of account or 5, whatever, which are shared. So if I create a new main account here, the main account is by default usable in all entities with the same chart of account. So for the time being, in this setup, we have more than 100 companies. We will go to maybe 400 or 500 in the future, but we all use the same chart of accounts, but based on IFRS standards, but we always use the same. So if I create a new account, I suspend an account, I do something about the naming of an account, I only have to maintain it on a central basis. So for me, it's very convenient. One chart of account, simple. Same goes for things like financial dimensions. So this one is, for example, a financial dimension which we use to track intercompany transactions. This one is also shared. So the list is the same for each legal entity, but I can say, for example, in legal entity 1001, this value is suspended. So you don't see it in that entity because it has no use. Or I can say no in company 1000, that's even more logical. Yes, I could say it's not authorized to use that value in company 1000, things like that. So once again, it's sharing of data, which is convenient in the finance part, but you also have it in the logistical part where you say I have a product master, which I can launch to certain entities, to all entities, and so on. So you have one master record for your product, and then you can release it to the entities that you like. There's also another concept I'm not going to show in detail, but you can say, for example, the customer groups I want to have in sync for all my Belgian entities, for example. That you say for all Belgian entities, it's always the same. So I want to keep them centralized. If I have a new one, I want them to be synced over the entities. So that's also a concept. Yeah. other examples, but in theory, you can add each table in the data sharing option. And that depends also on the knowledge of the system, because it's not advisable to share everything which is in the system, but you can set it up. And you can also say for which group of entities you want to do the sharing, because it's sometimes not handy to do it for all entities at the same time. Okay, then another part. So this one I've already shown. So the system that you see over here is a training system. So depending on how big the project is, you have normally multiple development environments, test environments, acceptance, production, of course. Here we also have a test, a training, and so on. We work with branches for our deployments. So we have a partner for the payroll, a partner for the payroll in the Middle East. So it's technical. From a technical point of view, it's a complex setup because we have various release streams depending on the pace that we have in those flows. So let's say we have a modification in the payroll in Belgium, then we have to schedule it to not interfere with the payroll of, for example, Middle East. So that's why we have a lot of development environments, a lot of test environments, only one production, that's for sure. Lifecycle service, that's the software Microsoft uses to do all the maintenance of the environment. Normally, over here, you have a project in your lifecycle, and project you have to do certain steps. And you see the steps that you have in Shore step or Prince2 or whatever. And you do an analysis, design, development, test, deploy, and finally you go live, you go into operation. So all these steps that you see over here, you have to tick, you have to do tasks in the system to go to a next phase. It seems quite stupid. But to move to the operation phase, you have to do a lot of steps in the system to ask to Microsoft to go live. So you have to ask, in fact, to Microsoft to move to production with your system, and Microsoft will check if you have done enough tests, if you have tested the performance of the system, and so on, in order that Microsoft is able to scale in the background the hardware. So it's cloud, but in the end, it's just a server. So Microsoft will do the sizing of the hardware. That's why it's important that we have tested enough, that we check the performance, and Microsoft will also do some telemetry on our databases to see if we have tested in the right direction. So that's one of the things that's available in Lifecycle Services. We also use it as a process modeler to put in our interactive help. So if I put this one on the slide, so we can say in a company we have multiple processes. We have maybe custom processes with or without customization in the system itself. We can create our own help functionality based on that, and we can attach it to that process library. I'm going to show you that in a few minutes. We also use that environment for deployment of technical objects, but also master data if you want. We can monitor our environment's performance. We can log bugs at Microsoft ticketing system. We can release our custom coding, and we can also have releases from Microsoft when there are updates or new platform releases and so on. So on the right-hand side, you see all the environments that we have. So you have development environments, you have a sandbox, test environment, another test environment, acceptance, UAT, another test, so a lot of testing, and we have finally production. So those are the environments. If I click on the details, you will see, okay, production is on release 10.0.7 or whatever. You will show that in a minute. Somewhere 10.0.8, so the latest release up till now, platform release 32, and he will give me an an insight if there are new releases from Microsoft. So you see we have a new quality update, maybe with some bug fixes. You can see what is in it, bug fixes, new functionality, whatever. You can see it over there and you can apply it to the system. And depending on the environment where you're at, it might have another version. So that's the task of the technical guys, is to keep the pace of the releases also. So my advice is to follow the Microsoft releases to keep track, because every month we have, more or less every month we have a Microsoft release. So for the technical guys, custom coding is done via extensions. So you build on top of the standard Microsoft code. So you cannot hijack the standard coding layer anymore. You have one label file for the entire database. Releases are done via the software or the portal that I've shown, Lifecycle Services. And the releases, until acceptance, you can do it yourself. As a developer or as a Microsoft partner, you can do it yourself. If you want to release to production, so the final stage, you have to ask it via Lifecycle Services to Microsoft. So you will put your technical package on the platform and you will ask Microsoft to deploy it. And then, excuse me, between 4 to 8 hours, they will deploy it. So you can ask to deploy it, for example, Saturday at 2 in the afternoon, and then they will commit to that time slot and they will do the release. A repercussion is that the SQL database from production is totally secured. So if you want to do a quick fix, it's not possible anymore. Also means that you cannot do any debugging. So everything related to the technical part, releasing, looking into the database, debugging is all secured. So you cannot do anything. If you have a major bug in production, either you ask Microsoft or you do it yourself in the acceptance environment with the same data, with the same technical layer on it, and you can try to do it yourself. So that's maybe the tricky part, is that production is totally a black box. So you don't see what is going on. If there are performance issues, you can track them in lifecycle. You can see the blocking queries and so on, but you cannot modify a record directly in the database. If you want to do that, you have to make a small script, add it in the menu somewhere and release it via the standard release management and do the correction over there, but it takes time. It will take you 1 to 2 days, whereas in a Vision, it takes you 5 minutes to go into the database and correct. And the hardware is not a limiting factor, it's cloud. So that's also an important remark, meaning that if you want to go live with finance and operations, that you have to do all the steps in lifecycle correctly. And one of the important steps was that you have to say, okay, how many sales orders do I have a month? How many outgoing invoices, ingoing invoices? How many batch jobs do I have? And so on. And based on that, Microsoft will do the scaling. If there is a performance issue afterwards, then Microsoft will turn sides and he will go and take a look into the production data, and then it will become a money issue, because up till now, if you do the scaling correctly, Microsoft will not complain. Every environment will cost money that you see over here, but it's not depending on the hardware that's in behind. Okay. Questions so far, because the time is almost gone, I think. So maybe some questions.
Well, we have 5 minutes left, Johan. I have two questions from Klaas Stichter, or actually a bit related, a bit of technical thing. In Business Central NAV, companies are implemented as a new collection of tables. So let's say customer table is implemented for each company. How is that done in the background here with?
That's a good question. So it's the same table, and the system works with data area ID. So you have one table with all companies in it, and depending on the localization, you will have more or less fields filled in. So if you go and look into the database, you will see fields, especially for the Russian localization, which are not filled in Belgium, but it's the same table.
Okay.
So if I go, maybe I can show, I have a plugin in Chrome installed to take a look in the tables of an environment. So yeah, question, let's say customer group. Of course, he doesn't find it. Just group. Voilà. If you click on that one, you will go to the table in that environment, but you will always see over here that he filters on companies all the time. So here you will see data area ID is 1000. Okay, over here I cannot filter, but the technical guy can do it. So over here in the same table, I have all companies, let's say.
And in NAV we have this data per company. So if is there also something here that you have a table which doesn't have this data area ID filled in, and so by default all the records can be viewed from any of the companies?
Yes, that's for example the chart of accounts part that is shared throughout all the entities. So there you don't have a data area ID on it, but
Clear.
most tables you have it, because
there was. I think this answered Klaas' question I had regarding the performance, something which was not fully clear, or probably I misunderstood or didn't hear it well. So if the system goes in production and it let's say, with all respect, you pay to performance in every stage before that, up until the user, the UAT database, it goes live and it performs like shit. You said something Microsoft will do, but is it the primary responsibility at that point for Microsoft to fix it, or is it yours?
That's the part of the sizing Excel. So you have to fill out an Excel with the assumed load on the system, and based on that, the sizing will be done. So you can say you have to extrapolate to, let's say, 5 years. What is the growth of my sales invoices? And based on that, the scaling will be done.
And if scaling then still seems to be not sufficient, what happens then?
Then they will look.
Maybe I can add something.
Yeah.
Maybe I can add something. Is you will also, having done a lot of performance tuning in the NAV world, you can also have a look into, okay, what have you done bad in the application? So if your sizing is correct, okay, then Microsoft provides you a proper environment, but you can still make or do stupid things in maybe customizations or things you have done to your own environment, and you can look into that via lifecycle management. Lifecycle Services. You can look into the bad performing queries, the blocking things, and you can even make corrections to those bad performing queries by doing suggestions and making new indexes and so. It's all in a controlled way, because you don't have the SQL Server database as with Business Central now. That is the same. But this is really, really nice.
Okay, sounds good.
But they will look into the database. Let's say if you have a customization from a partner which is written bad, which happens sometimes, then they will point at the software vendor to correct their code. In the end, if it doesn't perform well after that, then there will be a discussion based on what you filled out in Lifecycle, and maybe you forgot some of the zeros, let's say. Then it will become, then Microsoft will say, okay, we will increase the performance, but then it can become a costly option. Over here we had that example. We didn't pay for that at the end because it was a commercial issue, but they increased our service, I think, multiplied by 2 because of the sizing exercise was not done correctly at the payroll side.
Yeah, well, that's quite huge, yes.
Yeah, it becomes a discussion, like always. So
we're running into the hour.
Yes.
So time to, let's say, close. Thank you very much, Johan and Ludo. For me, surely it was a good introduction. A long time ago, I saw something of AX and I recognized some small things, but thank you very much. This recording will be on YouTube, probably tonight or tomorrow somewhere. So anybody who wants to get into it again and share it with others, feel free to do so. For now, Johan, Ludo, thank you very much again, and thanks you for all the attendees for being here. And have a great day, a great evening, great night, and we'll meet in a couple of weeks again. Thank you.
Okay, see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.